A few verses from John 20. John 20, verse 19. It was late that Sunday evening, and the disciples were gathered together behind locked doors, because they were afraid of the Jewish authorities. Then Jesus came and stood among them. "Peace be with you," he said. After saying this, he showed them his hands and his side. And the disciples were filled with joy at seeing the Lord. And Jesus said to them again, "Peace be with you. As the Father sent me, so I send you." Then he breathed on them and said, "Receive the Holy Spirit. If you forgive people's sins, they are forgiven. If you do not forgive them, they are not forgiven." This beginning of the resurrection stories on that first day or two is quite chaotic. It's just like you expect when something's happening that you can't believe. Not everybody stands up and says, "Oh, good-o, it's Easter." But you get individuals and couples and people saying, "You see this," or "I saw an angel, I saw the empty tomb, I saw Jesus." It's all got that messiness that you would expect if a bunch of us were confronted with something which we didn't really believe in but were supposed to believe in. It would be chaos. There would be a definite discussion. And then on this evening, everybody is together. And it's almost like, it doesn't say here, but you almost just feel Jesus saying, "I'm glad to catch you all together." At this point, apart from Thomas, they're all there. And in fact, the way that St. John would play this, although it says it's the apostles, this is really the first time that Jesus appears to a gathering, and may not have just been limited to those first apostles. Could have been all sorts of hangers-on and friends and what have you. This is the very beginning of Jesus risen from the dead. I got lots of humming here. Jesus risen from the dead, speaking to a group of people, a gathered group. And this group is in fact the progenitor of the church. It's the gathering of the people who, on the day of public Pentecost in Luke, they were all together in one place. Then in Acts 4, they needed again refreshment. They were all together in one place. And then you get the church throughout, whether it's Antioch or it's in Athens or it's Rome. They are the gathered people of God. And this is the very beginning of that. The risen Jesus meets them gathered together. The resurrection experience is individual and personal. The church is never corporate. We cannot be saved. Either you're saved or you're not saved. But we can be together. It's not private. It's not esoteric. It's not just me and my faith. And at the beginning here we have this sense of gathering and Jesus meets them in gathering. I think it's important that we retain the idea of gathering, whether it's to worship like we are here, whether you're in a home group or whether in a prayer triplet or whatever it is a gathering. There's a lot of sort of me and my faith and my opinions these days. The people who built these chapels remembered that. They're places for gathering. Goodness me, you come into this place and you think, whoa. They believed in gathering. They didn't believe in all just sitting at home, believing in doing their own thing. Jesus reveals himself in the context of gathering. And so it's a good place to be this morning. To come together, isn't it? But when you look at this little passage, this gathering is extraordinary. They are not men and women of great faith. In fact, they are scared of what's out there. Neither are they hugely faithful of the resurrection. They're so joyful when they see Jesus. You can tell that. There's been occasions when I prayed for things in great faith, as the minister always does. And then the prayer is answered, and I am ecstatic. So ecstatic as you feel you probably weren't expecting anything to happen. That sense of joy that, wow, this is really good. Yeah, I really am alive. Yeah, I know, but they were filled with excitement because what was true. So they are not men and women of great faith, and they were not men and women of mission, and they were scared. This is encouraging. If anybody's told you you're never going to experience the resurrection of Jesus unless you are really full of faith and really full of joy, if you are the sort of person that, having had a great worship time last week, finds it difficult day by day to retain a vivid sense of the presence and life of Jesus, if Jesus is not always real to you, if Jesus is not always just there, well, you're in good company. Jesus seems to specialize in this sort of group. It's those people have been the whole thing and gone back to Emmaus. He said, it's a good time to meet them. And Peter, taking all his mates off, gone fishing and bin the whole thing. Let's do breakfast. He does groups who are not all that sorted out. Not casting aspersions on you this morning, but it's a good opportunity, It's a good opportunity. And not only is this group not full of faith and what have you, but they are an in-group. They are very closed, literally closed. They are looking inwards. There's a very closed invitation list, and the doors are locked. They are everything that the people who have been running the so-called modern church lately would tell you they're not supposed to be like this. They are not open, they are not accessible, they are not doing anything out there. They are all in there. I mean, compared to the most strict, closed Brethren assembly, these people, well, makes the Brethren look like a beach mission. And they've even locked the doors. You wouldn't get away with that now with health and safety, would you? They are very closed. And yet Jesus comes and meets them closed as they are. In fact, he seems very pleased with it. He says, peace be with you. We don't have what we have with Elijah, where God continually says to Elijah, what are you doing here? Why aren't you out there doing mission, feeding the poor? Looking after the hungry, taking my message to the nations. Why aren't you out there? He doesn't say that. He says, peace be with you. It's very shalom. He's very happy with this. Let's meet. It's within this gathering. It's within this gathering that he reveals himself. We should not be embarrassed when we come aside and we gather together and we just leave the other for the time being and we meet with him. That's what happens here. Do not believe the people that say, unless you're doing mission, you won't meet Jesus. This wasn't a word. We need to come in and he meets them. And that vivid experience is what changes it. Because as soon as he's met them and showed them himself, his hands and his feet, and they're sure and they're inspired, then he says, and only then does he say, as my Father has sent me, so I send you. That is the order. Now you do mission. You meet me and I tell you about it. It has to be in that order. These two things go together. And so as the likes of Peter and then Paul changed the Middle East, they formed groups and they formed churches dotted all across. And the development of the church and the gathered people, the people were gathered together for worship, to teaching. They were coming in and they were going out. The ingathering precedes the outgoing. Our forefathers, in sort of 18th, 19th century Methodism were men and women who changed society. They dealt with the outcasts, with the minors, with the dispossessed, with the destitute. They dealt with social justice. They dealt with all kinds of moral issues and drink and all sorts of... These were men and women who were practical and radical in every way. You could say, wow, don't these Methodists have a method? They shame me. What did they do across this whole area? They built chapels to meet. I mean, whatever it is, a chapel full of pews is not a good social centre. It's not really good doing anything at all except meeting. But they met to worship, to be encountered by Jesus. These were the people that changed the world. One and then the other. You read about what they were doing. They brought people into their groups, into their classes. And then they brought people into the chapel. And there was a degree of closeness. You had to have a class ticket to get in. But they went out and people came in. We need in-gathering, whether it's in a small group or just a couple of us, before we're outgoing. Because we need to be gathered to meet with Jesus and to be fed. I remember when I was, a couple of occasions when I was a student minister in Cambridge, they sent us out into the deepest fens. And we went out, right out into sort of Lincolnshire and North Cambridgeshire, sort of Wisbeach and all that. Complete nothingness of, the fens. And you would come across, I remember coming across a place called Tilney Fen End. And when I got there, in my old Mini, along this dyke, there was this chapel. And there was nothing else to be seen anywhere. You couldn't see, literally, you couldn't see anywhere. It wasn't a religious facility in a housing estate. It was a place for gathering, to come together from all these isolated farms. Again, they used to go and have lunch with the stewards. We need to reintroduce this. And you'd go to somebody's house, and again they would go off to. It's a long time ago. I don't remember the details, but I went to this house, had a very nice lunch, and then the steward, who was also a farmer, said, "Right," he says, "I think I need to go and have a look at the cattle. Do you want to see the cattle?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "That'd be nice." And we went out the front door, and I thought, well, they're not within the next 5 miles. There's not a cow. Do you see cows in Lincoln? I thought, gosh, where are we going with these cows? He says, around the back. We were around the back, there's this big shed. He goes in this shed, there's all these cows eating pea tops. He said, "Oh, you bring them here to feed them," he said in Glasgow. I was very relieved when they have a 10-mile walk to see these cows, but they were gathered to be fed. Just as the people need to be gathered to be fed. They didn't go out. I think that in the modern church we have been misled. We have been told that we have to be out there all the time, and we've neglected being in here. If those disciples have been running around like headless chickens, being picked off by the authorities and whatever, if they hadn't been in there, they wouldn't have met Jesus and they wouldn't have gone out and changed the world. That doesn't mean they don't meet him out there as well, but it has to be an ingathering as well as an outgoing. We've been told again and again we must be the inside-out church. I think we need to put on the whole armour of God. That's hard enough. But you try and put it on when it's inside out. You can't do it. You just can't do it. We need what they had. And so this great example is of gathering together and Jesus meeting us as a group, as well as individuals, and not worrying terribly that we aren't perfect in faith and confident in the resurrection, and not worrying that we're not actually doing mission in Market Dew Street this morning, but actually being gathered around the Lord. We are in good stead. And from that we are sent out into this week and whatever. Now that's okay, but I'll just say something to conclude. Because it's okay feeling, yeah, I want to be inspired by the Lord, then I can go and live my Christian life day by day. But actually the problem is that we often have, I think it was okay for them, but I often have meetings and Jesus doesn't appear to turn up. I often get to gather. I'm gathered, but that's me gathered. And the band sings some songs as well. And I'm thinking, I know he's here, but not visible. It would have been okay. It would have been okay to be there. And perhaps I want to be inspired and moved and all that sort of thing, but it doesn't quite work for me. So I'm just going out there thinking, I must do better. But St. John is not naive in this way. St. John tells us that it's not just let's be inspired by Jesus and the look in the eye and go off and do the business. No, you see in this passage that Pentecost is already leaking in. The resurrection is fully tied in St. John's Gospel to Pentecost. And so Jesus is there physically with them, resurrected. See my hands and my side and my feet. And yet he is there in the Spirit. They are there, the doors are locked, and he comes straight in. as spirit. He says, my peace I give to you. Yes, he does say shalom. This is fine. But he says it twice. My peace. Peace be with you. And St. John remembers him saying, my peace I leave with you. My peace I give to you. I read that this week in a funeral. We remember that. It's something that he gives. This is one of the fruits of the Spirit. Love, joy and peace. I give it. I'm not just here to inspire you and to meet you, but I'm giving you something. The fruit of the Spirit, I'm going to give you it. And then he breathes on them to receive the Holy Spirit. It's not just I met with Jesus and I ran off and I was inspired. It is that he gives me of himself. I'm not always keen from a human point of view when people breathe on me. Are you? You sort of, whether it's in a tube train or in a party, people breathe on you. I think it's really nice, but I'm really getting more of you than I want. I was thinking, in all seriousness, breathe on me, breath of God. I need all of you that I can get. But it is an intimate thing, isn't it? Roch, breath and spirit's the same word. The breath of God. God breathes life into the dust in Genesis to bring life. He breathes himself. It's my breath. It's not the Spirit. Myself. I breathe myself into you. With Ezekiel, he breathes into the dry bones. And then Jesus, to these disciples, breathed on them. So he gives them himself. It's not just, you've seen me, now you're inspired, now you're convinced, now do the business. No, I'm going to breathe myself into you. This is a charismatic event. It's not just I believe. And they can take that with them. And so this morning, Jesus touches us, but if you are open, then Jesus will enter you and go with you. And so at the end of the day, when they go out, he says, now you go out and I will be with you. Well, yes. And then enigmatically, he says at the end, if you forgive sins, they will be forgiven. If you don't, they won't. He said, why does he say that there? I think he says that there because right through Jesus' ministry, the big controversy was when he forgave sins, because, as the authorities said, only God can do that. Don't mind you healing people and teaching people, don't forgive sins. It's a sign of the work of God. Now you go out in my Spirit and you are channels of grace. And through you, I can forgive people. Through you, I'm happy with judgment for them. You have authority on earth. Because I go with you. You don't go just on my behalf and I'll hang around in the room till you come back. I go within you. This is not like going to an electric fire on a cold day, warming up and hoping you stay warm for the rest of the day. What it reminded me of, abstrusely, was some trams I came across in Bordeaux. You'll all know them. But these trams, they don't have any wires and they don't need batteries. And going through the historic part of Bordeaux, just keep going because underneath the road there's an induction loop. And the power is there and they run on it unseen. I think that's good of the Spirit. We go out. We don't live it. We don't even get recharged batteries and run down by Friday on a good week. And Monday on a bad week. You know what I'm saying. Do not let us just be inspired by the Christology. They met Jesus, we meet Jesus, they went forth, we went forth. But see that St. John is saying Jesus met them in all his reality, but breathed into them himself. Resurrection, Easter, Pentecost, drawn entirely together. And as we meet together this morning, we are in good stead. It's good to meet. It's good to be together. And it would be good if we were full of faith, but the fact that we're not is not fatal. Jesus says, Shalom, I'm here. It's good. And this morning, say, Lord, breathe on me. When you come and perhaps you want to kneel down by the rail, just say, Lord, I need you to breathe into me this week so that I have your living reality. The band are just going to come and play for us now. We're going to sing a really old song that's very good. As we are gathered, Jesus is here. Born of the Spirit we are. And I want you all to feel that you are breathed on today for this coming week. Let's just stand quietly in the Lord's presence, shall we? And just as I think there are the pictures, tend to stand up when somebody walks into a room, don't you? Let's all stand. That's good.